I never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion.
Attempt a particular test only for the boot camp certificate, or is it for your own practice? So if you're attending the boot camp only for the certificate, then I would recommend not to do it, because certificates don't really matter. I'm telling you this on the first day, certificates don't really matter. Whenever you're going to sit for an interview or any placement test, they're going to judge you on their own parameters. They're not going to look at any certificates. Certificates, they are going to only judge you on their own parameters, and I'm telling you, it is difficult. Okay, so if you're telling me that you didn't get the mail, I can see here myself that all of the candidates have been invited. I can even see who all of you got the mail and who all of you did not even open up the mail. I can see here which mail was opened up. I can see who all attempted the test. So if you're saying that you didn't get the mail, either you have registered with the wrong email ID or you're lying here on the group. Okay, so I can see a lot of you face problems while giving the test. That is fine. But for those, I'm talking for those of you who are not even attempting it. So let us just do one thing. Let us make the tests mandatory and let us involve them in the evaluation of the boot camp. So any one of you who thinks that they're going to get away by not giving the tests, let us just keep this thing as mandatory. So today I'll be sending out mails to all of those who did not give the tests. Okay, so talking about, let us just move ahead. And for your information, I have mentioned this here, and I'm going to mention this in the group as well. And I'm going to send it. I'm going to send out mails today for all of those who have not attempted any of the tests. Along with that, it is hereby informed to you that these tests are going to be a part of the evaluation for the boot camp. So for successful completion, we are going to also evaluate the test that you have given. Okay, so let us take up a few doubts of what happened while you were giving the test, and then we are going to move ahead. So if you're saying that you are facing any issues while doing the coding questions while coding, so we are going to try and take up questions from tests. Like we are going to take up questions from the first test today and then discuss them. But it won't be possible each and every time because we have different agendas here that have to be covered, right? So either we can discuss the questions or it is going to be the boot camp. So we are going to do this part very quickly. And so today we are going to be discussing questions of the first test. Let us see when we can discuss questions from the second test and so on. Okay, so you were saying that mm, there was an issue with the code editor, and after some time the screen went black and I was logged out. So a lot of you have attempted the test after the link has expired, so it is all obviously going to turn out to be blank and the test won't load. For others who are saying that the editor was not working properly, it happens when you have an internet issue. Okay, so try and give the test on a connection which is having a good speed. Otherwise, these kind of problems are very common. Okay, so it'll not be possible for me to take up questions from the uh, yesterday's test today, but we are going to be looking at for the first test and its questions. Okay, so let us begin. Let us. So, do you have the questions for the first test? In the first test, there were two questions. The first one was sharing the birthday chocolate, and the other one was migratory birds. So, do you have questions? If I am going to start explaining right away, can you just open up the questions and read with me? Okay, so all of you on whatever devices you are accessing this class, I would request you to just open up the questions. I'm going to read along and then I'm going to explain it to you as we move ahead. Okay, so let us pick up the first question. Okay, so the first question in test one was sharing the birthday chocolate. Let me read it out and then we are going to go ahead and look at how can you resolve any particular question whenever you're uh, attempting it online. Okay, so the question says that you have been given a chocolate bar and you have two children, Lily and Ron, and they are determining how to share it. Okay, so each of the squares has an integer on it. When it says each of the squares has an integer on it, they are also giving you an image. So if you can see, the image clearly shows that on each chocolate square you have a integer. Okay, then it says Lily decides to share a contiguous segment of the bar selected such that the length of the segment matches Ron's birth month and the sum of the integers on the squares is equal to his birthday. Okay, so this is something that you will have to focus on. It says that whenever she wants to share the chocolate, she wants to do it in a contiguous segment. So there cannot be breaks, first of all. The next thing is that she says that the length of the segment should be equal to the birth month. So if say suppose his birth month is 3, then the length or the number of squares that you're going to have should be 3. Okay, and the next thing it says is the sum of the integers on the square is equal to his birth date. So you have to, so simply what do you do here? You simply write down the array that you have. So in this case, since she's saying that all of the chocolate squares are going to be in the form of an array, right? Since it has been mentioned in the image as well, the chocolate is not going to be in the form of a matrix, it is going to be in the form of an array that is one dimensional. Okay, so this is the first thing that you should clarify here. Let us move ahead and read again. So we have the next line says that you must determine how many ways she can divide the chocolate. So please note here, it is asking you to find out the number of ways in which she can divide this chocolate. Okay. So let me just write down this example here. So in the input, they have given you, they are saying that they have given you this. So say for example, we have this here. For those who joined late, we are discussing this problem from the first test, which is sharing the birthday chocolate. Okay. So this is something that they have given to you. What is the birth month they have given you? 2. Okay, so they have given you the date as 3 and the month as 2. Right? The date as 3 and the month as 2. So if you can see here, it says that this is D and this is M. You can consider this as N, which is the total number of squares that you're going to have in your chocolate, or the total number of elements in your array that you can have. Okay, so this is she's saying that Ron's birthday comes on date 3rd and the month is 2. So now she wants to find out all of those set of squares which are in contiguous memory allocation, and let us see what is the final output here and then understand the approach also. So the first thing she says is that the number of squares that she is going to give to Ron should be equivalent to 2. That is the month. So you pick up every time you're going to look at a size of 2 squares. Why? Because the month that has been given to you is 2 and they should add up to 3. Okay, so you see here 1 and 2 adds to 3 and the number of squares that you have here is 2. The next one that you have here is this, which is 2 and 1. Again, the number of squares is equivalent to 2, but the sum here also is equivalent to 3. So you consider this as well. Okay, so for this particular case, you have the output as 2 and you can see the output that you've got, which is the first set or the number of ways, since you have to find out the number of ways. So the first way you can do it is by considering these 2 squares, and the next way you can do it is by considering these 2 squares. Okay, so the output will be equivalent to the number of ways. Now let us look at the approach that you can do it. Since this question can be considered using the easier approach, it is not going to require any efficiency. It can be easily done. So let us look at the basic solution here, which you can just see and tell. The one by which we are actually looking at here, which is So you pick up the first element. So you've been, let us say you've been given this array. Let me write this down again. You've been given this array, and in this array you have to find out all of those sets. Now those sets should be of size 2, which has already been given to you. So you, what do? You first start off with an outer loop. You start off with an outer loop, let us say. So you do I is equal to 0 to I less than n, let us suppose here. And what do here? You say that I am going to pick up every time number of squares equivalent to m. That has been given to us as an input. So you say I am going to run another loop, which is, let us say, starting from j is equal to 0 to j less than m. This is going to consider size 2. Okay, so here what do? And now the next thing that you have to do here is, once you pick up two elements, you have to first add them and see if it is equivalent to this number d that has been again given to you as an input. So what do? You, in the inner loop, you pick up elements two at a time, since the value of m that has been given to you is 2. So you pick up two elements using the inner loop and you add them. So you pick up these two elements, you add them, and you get 3. Now, after you've added them, you compare it to this value d. You pick up these two elements, add them, compare it to d. You have this if condition here, which you are using. So let us say you consider a temporary variable and you initialize it to 0 every time. And once you pick up these two elements, you first add them. After you add them, you have this if condition, which is going to check if this temp is equivalent to d. D is the date. Okay, so if it is equivalent, you increase the count. So let us say you have another variable result count, which has been initially 0, and you say that I am going to increment this result count if the sum here comes out to be same as d. Okay, so you see here in this case you get the sum as 3. So you increment result count. Your result count becomes 1 now. Okay, now in the next iteration of the loop, you pick up the next two elements. Okay, so considering the next two elements, you have to start from here and not here. So that is why you have this inner loop, which is going to consider the next two elements, and it is going to, let us say, start from this position. Since you will have j++, it is next going to move to this place and then consider two more elements. So now again, a size of 2 squares is considered, and then you find out the sum. After you find out the sum, you say if temp is equal to d again. So when you check if temp is equal to d, again it comes out to be 3, which is equivalent to d. So you again increment result count. This time it becomes 2. Next, again you pick up the next two elements. This time it is going to be 1 and 3. You find out the sum. It comes out to be 4. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 is not equivalent to d. So you do not increment result count. Again, you pick up the next two element, which is 3 and 2. And you find out the sum. So 3 plus 2 comes out to be 5, which is not equivalent to d. So you simply say, I am not going to again increment the result count. And after you come out of the loop, after you come out of this inner loop, you simply say, inner loop as well as the outer loop, you simply say that the number of ways in which Lily can divide the chocolate is equivalent to result count. Okay, so you give out result count as the output. So this is simply how you can do it. There was no big thing here. Any doubts in understanding how we are doing it? Any doubts, anyone? Yes. So Pushkar is saying that we can use here I less than n minus m. Yes, that can also be done. In that way, the loop is going to run less number of times, but anyway, the actual what do you call time complexity is will come out to be the same. It is going to be n into m anyway. So yes. Okay, so if there are no doubts, let us move ahead to the next question. So the next question that was a part of the test was migratory birds, right? Let us look at that as well. Okay, so in the migratory birds question, it says that you have been asked to help study the pollution, sorry, not the pollution, it is population of birds migrating across the continent. Each type of bird you are interested in will be identified by an integer value. So another thing to look here is why no. So why would the inner loop start from I to I plus m? You can do it simply for starting from 0. The inner loop is only to pick up. So here, if you see, the inner loop is only in order to pick up two elements at a time, which is number of elements equivalent to the month. Okay, without this, without writing, if you're actually trying to make it efficient, that can also be done. But here the only purpose of this inner loop is to pick up two elements at a time or the number of elements equivalent to m. It is going to work in this way as well. Okay, don't get confused in this I plus 2. Just keep it very basic and simple. Okay. Okay, let us just quickly continue with the next question, because then otherwise we're going to have very less time for the actual topics that we want to discuss today. Yes, so we have no, why should I try to run this code? You should try to run this code, right? First try it yourself and then run the code. If so, so let me just take up some of your questions here. You're saying that I should start J from I. Why should I do that? If I haven't yet written down what you are going to sum with temp. So if you say temp is equal to temp plus the array I plus j, that is also going to work. No problem here can be solved in only one way. You have different ways to write down the indexes, different ways to solve a problem. It is not possible that the way that you're thinking should be the same way that I am thinking. I've only told you what should the inner loop do for you here. That is why we write pseudocodes. We write pseudocodes in order to make everyone understand and not just follow one particular solution. In C programming language, you do not have array out of bounds error. An array will not be out of bounds if you consider this particular approach here. Okay, let us move ahead. If you think that you'll be able to do it with the methods that you think you can, then very good, go ahead with that. Okay, what about the timeout error hacker show when I write that code? So whenever you are writing down a particular code, if you're using uh, more than so every time it mentions the time that you can actually take up for each test case. That time is for every test case that it is going to consider. Now I have tried this question on HackerEarth with the same complexity which I have written down. It works, but I think for some of you, um, you might have written down something that is taking too long. So if let us say you are using some other language and you're first calculating, so there are let me just not go ahead and pinpoint one thing at a time, because there are a lot of things that you need to consider while you're actually coding on an online platform. Okay, so say for example, one of those things is that you are calculating the size of the array. Okay, so that also takes a lot of time. Okay. Yes, you could do that as well. We are not here talking about how efficient you can write the code. We are here talking about the most basic solution that you can refer to so that you can solve the problem. So if you go ahead and make the problems efficient every time, it is going to take up more time. Okay, so for those who were not able to attempt this, even two of these questions or even one questions in 1 hour, they could refer to this particular solution. Obviously, you can make it more efficient if you want by whatever indexes that you were telling me. You could do that. Okay. Let us move ahead with the next question that you have, which is migratory birds. So you have been asked to help study the population of birds migrating across the continent. Each type of bird you are interested in will be identified by an integer value. Each time a particular kind of bird is spotted, its ID number will be added to your array of sightings. Okay. You would like to be able to find out which type of bird is most common given a list of sightings. So we say that in this particular question, you have been asked that there are certain number of birds that can be sighted all along, but there are only so for this particular example, you see that they have given you some certain constraints as well. So anytime you are coding a question on an online platform, it is necessary for you to look into the constraints as well. Okay, so you say that for this particular question, you are going to start off with an array. So they are saying that assume your bird sightings are of types these. So let me write this down also so that it is visible to everyone. So this question is migratory birds. Okay, so the example that they have given, let us consider the same example. So let us say that you have an array of sightings of the birds, which is 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3. Okay, so the first thing to note here is that the sample example that they have given to you is actually in a sorted form, which is, let us say, the first type of bird is seen first, and then there are no other sightings of this kind of bird, and then the second type of bird and the third type of bird. So this is something that is not actually happening in the other test cases as well. This is only for this one. So if you in any way get confused with this, this is not how it is working. Until and unless it is specifically mentioned that it is in this form, do not consider it. Okay, so we have this here. Now it is saying that you have to find out the type of bird which is occurring most number of times, which is cited the most number of times. So for that, for finding out that, what will you have to do? You will have to find out the occurrence of the one which is occurring the most number of times, right? You will have to find out the ID. So these are the IDs of the birds. You will have to find out the IDs of those birds which are occurring most number of times. Okay, and it says that, say for example, if two of the bird IDs are occurring or cited the same number of times, then you should return the one with the lower ID. Okay, so let me, so here if you can see the bird of type 1. So bird of type 1 is cited 2 times, right? The bird of type 2 is again cited 2 times. The bird of type 3 is cited 1 time. Right? Correct? So now you see, you have to find out that bird which is cited most number of times. But you see type 1 and type 2 have been cited the same number of times. So in this particular case, the question mentions that you have to return type 1 because it has a lower ID. So you basically have to return the one which has a lower ID. So what do you do here? One of the approaches, so again, like for the previous question, you can have various approaches and various ways that you can do it. For this particular question, one of the approaches could be that you consider a count array. So what is a count array? Let us say that since they have, so in the constraints part, of this particular question, they mentioned that you can have only 5 different types. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The IDs that can occur in this particular citing can only be of these 5 types. So since this number is very small, I'm going to consider a count array. So count array is basically an array which is going to keep a count of the type ID of the bird. So you simply say whenever I'm going to input my array, input the sightings of these birds with their IDs, I'm going to consider the count array. So in the count array, let us say I'm going to have a count array of size 6 because the indexes start from 0. So let us say I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so you take an extra space of this count array. This is count array, and you have these indexes here. So depending upon the index, you are going to store the number of occurrences. So since the indexing start from 0, we are not going to consider this, but we are going to initialize this count array to 0. So simply initialize this count array to 0 and do one thing. You say that this here, once you are going to input these sightings, so you say 1. The type of bird that has been sighted is 1, so you increment the value here. You say 1. Initially all of these were 0. Let us consider these as 0. And once you've got this sighting, you do 1 here. The next bird that is being cited is again of type 1. So you increment here, you make this as 2. Okay. So this has been made as 2. The next type of bird that has been cited is type 2. So at this type index 2, you simply increment. You do 1. Okay. Again, the next type of bird that has been cited is 2 again. So you again increment at this particular index, which is 2. The next type of bird that has been cited is 3. So you mention here 1. You increment at this index. Increment the value at this particular index. Now it becomes 1. Finally, you have, while you were taking input, you were doing this as well. That is incrementing in the count array. And after you have done that, you find out the maximum element in this particular array. So now you work with the count array and you find out the maximum element. So you see the maximum element whenever you are going to find out, you say max is equivalent to 2 here. Okay. And after that, you see at which index do I have max. So at the first index where I have max is this index. So the first index where you find out this value max, you return this index. So you return 1, and that is your output for this particular question, which is bird of type 1 is the one which has been cited most number of times. Okay, so is this approach clear to everyone? For this particular approach, you simply go ahead by, let us say you input while you're inputting. So you start off by saying, let me just write this down in this way. You start off by I is equal to 0, I less than n. And you, while you're scanf of these numbers here, scanf of the array, and with that you do count at which particular place do you want to increment. So you do count a of I and you increment at this particular index. It might be possible that so Arushi is saying that she followed the same approach, but can it be possible that it showed runtime error? Yes, it is possible, because it might be showing you runtime error because if you initially don't initialize count array to 0, it has garbage values. So whatever garbage values it has, it might be possible that it is considering that garbage value as a maximum element. So let us say you have a garbage value of 535 here, and now you want to find out the maximum element. So you do this. Okay, so this initialization is mandatory. No, so no drawback. So as I said, you can use any approach that you like. The approach should be correct and it should pass all the test cases. If it has, then it is fine. Okay. So a lot of you first tried to sort it as well. It is fine if you did that. But why would you require to sort the array? No, so sorting will not is actually not required. Okay, let me just quickly repeat this part again, and then we are going to move ahead with the topics for today. So we have this, let us say you have this array as an input, and in this input array, you have certain sightings based on the type IDs of the birds. Okay, so you see here, what do? You, while you're scanning, while you are actually taking input of this array, along in that particular loop only, you initialize the count array. So initially take a count array of size, we have taken size 6 here because we start off by 0. The indexing is starting off by 0. So let us consider it as a size of 6. We have all of these elements, which is of starting from type ID 1 to going up till type ID 5. What you could do here is also consider this, and then let us say consider -1 element as the actual position or +1 element as the actual position. But nothing really changes if you, even if you add one more element in your array, because you're actually considering some more extra space that is going to be considered anyway. Okay, so after you do that, you say that I am going to put in the count. So you see here, you initialize the count array to 0 initially, and as you input these values, you are going to increment at this particular index. So this is actually the index at which you have to increment. So you increment each time by 1 at the particular index that you see here. So at index 1, you are going to increment a value. You increment here at 1. Initially it was 0, you increment here 1. Then again, when you get 1, you again increment at this particular index, which is 1. So you get 2 here. The next sighting that you have is for 2. So you increment at this index 2 and simply have this element as incremented by the value 1. Again, when you have this sighting of 2, you increment at this index. Then you have a sighting at index 3, so you increment here at index 3. So simply you keep on doing that until you have taken input of all of the elements. So after this, you actually have the count array. This is something known as the count array, which is going to store the count of the elements. So it is going to store the count of each element, and which means how many times it is going to occur. So you see, the element 1 is occurring twice, the element 2 is occurring twice, the element 3 is occurring only 1 time. Rest of the elements are occurring 0 times. And so after this, you find out which is the maximum element, which is the element here that is occurring most number of times. That can be determined by looking at the frequency. So you find out the maximum element. After you find out the maximum element, you see what is the index of this maximum element. So index that you get, you simply return that index, and which is equal, this index is going to be equivalent to the type ID or the ID of the bird that has been cited the most number of times. Okay, so if there are no doubts, then let us move ahead. Quickly, if there are any doubts in this particular approach, you can obviously use so many other approaches that you have mentioned on the group for the others who have. This is one of those. And yes, so if there are no doubts, then let us move ahead. So even okay, so you're saying that it will be replaced by the number of occurrences. But if say, let us suppose in this particular uh, example that you can see, if you did not initialize these the count array here, it would have been some garbage values, right? But see, only the occurrences of these type of birds have been occurring, so only these numbers will be replaced here. Okay, only these numbers are going to be replaced here, which is at index 1, at index 2, and at index 3. The rest of the elements remain the same. So that is why in case of a garbage value, it is not going to work. Okay, okay, so let us begin with the topics that we are going to be discussing today. So we are going to be talking about two-dimensional arrays today, which are also known as matrices. So we say that two-dimensional arrays are actually, for our own convenience, are represented as matrices. So we say matrix, and let us take an example and then also look at so we are simply reviewing whatever you already know, so which is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So let us say that you have this matrix here, and this matrix, as you can see, is a 3 cross 3 matrix. So by 3 cross 3, I actually mean the order of the matrix, right? And what does this 3, the first 3 here means? The number of rows that you're going to have, and the next 3 is going to represent the number of columns that you're going to have in your matrix. Okay, so simply this is how you actually represent a matrix whenever you do it mathematically. But let us also look at, so as we go further, we are also going to look at what how this actual matrix is represented. Here currently the way it is represented is for our own convenience and to understand easily whenever we are performing any kind of operations. So let us first begin with the declaration part. So how do you declare an array? DECLA. Okay. So in the declaration, whenever you want to, let us say, declare a matrix or a two-dimensional array, you simply, let us say, have an example here, and let us understand how this works. So you have the type, the data type basically, of what kind of matrix do you want to have. So matrix again is going to store similar type of elements. It is an extension of one-dimensional array. It is in two-dimensional form. So it is going to store the same type of elements and not different type of elements. So we need to mention the data type of the matrix that you want to have. Okay, then the next thing that you have is the name of the matrix or the two-dimensional array with which you are going to refer it to it in the program. And then you have the number of rows, like we have this order here, which is number of rows and the number of columns, right? So this is simply the declaration. And again, so this type of declaration is a static declaration. By static, I mean since you have already predefined the size, that is the number of rows and the number of columns in the program, which is you have already said that my matrix is going to have only 5 rows and 4 columns. So this, okay. Now let us look at the initialization part. If you say want to initialize the array in the program itself, what do? You simply write down the number, all the elements. So there is a bit of a format here. So let us consider if you have a 3 cross 3 matrix and you want to initialize it. So you are going to do it by mentioning the elements in the row in the form of rows. So we are going to look at why it is done in the form of rows as well. But for now, so you have this first row here. In this first row, you mention all of the elements of the first row. Okay, so you have these elements of the first row separated by a comma, and then you have the elements of the second row. Okay, just give me a moment. Let me just turn on my charger. Okay, so sorry about that. Let us continue. So we have this matrix here. We are saying that how are you going to initialize it? So you simply mention the numbers in the form of a okay. So you have this here. So this is what you initialize. This is how you initialize, say, whenever you want to do it in the program itself. And otherwise, what do? So if, say, suppose you want to take input from the user, so what do? You simply say that I am going to use for loops. So you use two loops, right? So using two loops, you simply start off by, let us say, I is equal to 0 to I less than the number of rows, and then in the inner loop you have j, let us say j is equal to 0 to j less than the number of columns, and you simply do scanf and do it for a, let us say your, okay, let us just name it as mat I j, right? So this is for taking input from a user. Okay, so if you want to take input from the user, you do this way. Otherwise, if you want to initialize in the program itself, you use this way. Okay, so this is a format here. Let us move ahead and let us talk about how many elements can you have in your array. Okay, so the number of elements. So up till now, does any one of you have any doubts? This is very basic part. You might have looked into a lot of times. All of you might already know about this, but we are still, reviewing few things. Any doubts, anyone? Okay, so for those of you, how many times do I have to tell you that while I am actually explaining something, you'll need to focus here. So if you Geetika Arora, Mayank Joshi, if you actually want to just keep on doing a certain thing, why are you actually attending the class? I mean, when you actually have the right time, so it is very important for you to let me just go on and tell you this as well. uh, so whenever it is the right time for you to do a certain thing and you do not do it and then you do it at some other time, you're missing out on something, right? So this is something very simple. You might already know it, but since you cannot understand it, let us just move ahead then. Okay, so this is the initialization part, and let us move ahead and talk about how do you know the elements, how do you know the number of elements in the two-dimensional array that you have. Okay, Naman Sharma, can you just go ahead and explain the rest of it? Let us not continue the class for today. Uh, it is going to be done by Naman Sharma. So yes, Naman, go ahead and just create, let us say, live lecture on Teams, and then post the link here, and then we are going to look at whatever you're explaining. Okay, so thank you all for today. We are not going to continue with the class. Uh, please, everyone, join on Naman Sharma's link. He is going to post it in the group now. Okay, let us continue. It is not about your apologies. It is about something that I'm continuing here and you're discussing within yourselves. So if some of you are discussing the previous doubts, then you're not listening to this part, and then again you'll be having doubts from this section later on. Okay. So we were talking about the number of elements. So can anyone tell me how can you determine the number of elements? It is really simple to understand. Number of elements in a matrix is actually equivalent to number of elements in a matrix is equivalent to correct. So you're going to simply multiply the number of rows and the number of columns, which is going to tell you how many elements can you have in the matrix. So say for example, let us simply take up an example. So if you have 5 rows and 4 columns in the matrix, you are going to have 20 elements, right? And there will be each row is going to have how many elements will each row have? For a matrix which is of order 5 cross 4, how many elements are you going to have in a row? And how many Yes, so each row is going to have 4 elements and each column is going to have 5 elements, right? So this was something very simple. Let us continue and understand what is row major and column major. Okay, so as I previously said that in any matrix that you have, so this is the simple way that you actually represent a matrix. Whenever, let us say, you want to perform any operations and you're doing it mathematically, right? So in mathematics, you might have um, performed operations on matrices and you might have seen that this is how you represent a matrix. But actually, whenever a matrix is stored in the memory, it is not in this form. It is not in this grid form. It is actually in the form of a one-dimensional array. Like you actually store a one-dimensional array, it is in the same form. So how is it stored? So the elements of each row, you pick up the elements of each row and then you place it in this format. So you simply, let us say, pick up these elements 1 2 3, then the elements of the next row and then the next row and so on, right? So you simply write 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So this is the way in which you are reading the rows. This format of storing a matrix is known as the row major format. Okay, yes, correct. It is in the linear form, and this is the row major format of storing the elements of any matrix. Now, see here what happens is that C programming language is going to use row major format. We have another format which is known as column major format. Sorry. So you can store elements in the column major format as well. let us first understand what is column major format, and then let us see why C programming actually does this. So you have, let us consider the same matrix, and let us write down what will be the column major format. So in the column major format, earlier, since you considered rows, in the column major format, you are going to consider the elements in the form of columns. So you move from one column to other like this. So you move here, then the next column, and then the next column, right? So the storage will be in the form of 147, 2, 5, 8, 3, 6, and 9. Okay, so this is the column major format. Now, these are actually the two formats in which any matrix can be stored. Now, there are certain languages which use column major format, and there are other languages which use row major format. C is one of those languages which uses row major format. Now, since there are some other languages which came earlier than this C programming language, so they used column major format, but it was found that row major format is actually faster in terms of data access as compared to column major format. So this format was actually used by C programming language. Okay, so this format is also known as the TV scanning format. The another name for this format is also TV scanning format. So yes, so this is about row major and column major format. Now there is this other thing, not really related to matrices, but if you know, while you are passing to a two-dimensional array, so whenever you're passing an array to a function as an argument, whenever you use an array as an argument in a one-dimensional array, you do not really need to mention the size, right? You can actually mention the size as a different argument also. But for a two-dimensional array, you will have to mention the number of columns. You will have to mention the number of columns always whenever you are passing the array as an argument to a function. So let us look at another. So one of the reasons for that is that C actually uses row major format. You will actually understand this if you look at how the address is calculated. So let us also look at the address calculation part for a two-dimensional array. If up till now you have any doubts in understanding row major and column major format, then you can post in the group. Otherwise, let us continue with understanding the address calculation in two-dimensional arrays. Yes, so why does C++ also store in row major format? So all of the programming, so there is no specific reason for that. It is only based on how the language wants to actually access the data. But most of the programming languages that came after C and those that came after C actually use row major format. Is the reason was that the access is a bit faster as compared to column major. Okay, so we are talking about, since there are no doubts, we are talking about address calculation in two-dimensional arrays. So we say that, let us consider an example, and through an example we are going to understand what will be a generalized formula in order to calculate the address of a two-dimensional array. Yes, so why number of columns are passed in the function is the same reason. Let us also understand first let us look at the address calculation part, and through that it will be clear to you why in the function argument passing, while you're passing a two-dimensional array, the number of columns are required. Okay. So let us consider an example. You have, let us say, an integer array. We are going to consider an integer array, and the number of rows here are 10 and the number of columns are, the number of rows are 5 and the number of columns are 10. Okay, so let us say you want to now find out the address of, let us say, one element. Let us consider it as 10. Okay. So you have address, you want to find out the address of this element, and the complete matrix that you have has a size of 5 cross 10. Now, how are you going to do it? So let us say you have this array and it has certain elements that are mentioned here like this. Okay, so this has 10 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So these are 10 elements in the first row. So let us represent the first row as 0 here. This is the first row, and this is going to be the first column. Let us have the number for the first column as 0 again, and let us also consider the second. Since we want to find out, let us see where is this element located when you want to find out its address. So let us say if you have this matrix here, and again in the next row you have 10 elements, and you have this as row number 1. Okay, so this is the row number, this is the column number, row number 1 and column number 0. So it means that this is the element whose address you want to find out. Okay, so how are you going to do it? Let us write down the formula for finding out the address of this particular element when you have a complete two-dimensional array of this size. Okay, so how are you going to do it? You start off, so this is, since you always require the base address of any array whose address you're calculating. So the base address is going to start from here, right? This is going to be the base address. Let us consider this as MA. Okay, so you say that address of A of 1, 0 is going to be equal to MA. So you're going to first start off by considering the base address. So you have this base address here. And now to this you add, what are you going to add? So let us look at that also. So you are saying that I am going to reach to this element. For this, I will have to skip the first row, right? So for skipping the first row, which is this row number 0, you want to skip all of these 10 elements. So you first of all require the complete size of the number of columns that you have here, right? How many columns do you have, and how much byte of data do you want to skip from the first row? So for that you say that since there are 10 elements here in the first row and I have to skip those 10 elements, so I do 10 and I multiply to it the number of bytes that each element is going to take. Since there are 10 elements and each element is going to take up 4 bytes, since this is an integer matrix, so you multiply 4. And then you multiply the row number that you want to go to. Okay, so since for this example, you want to go to this row, which is row number 1. So you multiply 1 here. And say suppose if you wanted to go to the next row, then you will have to skip the next 10 elements also. So if say suppose you wanted to go to this row number 2 here, which is actually the third row in the matrix, then you will have to skip these 10 elements again. First 10 elements will be these, the second 10 elements will be these. So for that you will have to mention here 2. But here since it is going to be, since you want to find out the address of the first one only, so you mention 1. Okay, so this is Up till now, you have reached here, and now you have to go to a particular column as well. You have skipped the number of rows and you want to reach a column now. So for the column, you say that I want to go to column number 0, which is actually the first column. So you do 0 into the number of elements that you want to skip, multiply by the data size. So since this is integer here, you do 4. Okay. So this is how you can calculate the address of any particular element. So what did you actually consider here? If using this particular, so first of all, can you tell me if you have any doubts in understanding this address calculation part? This part, how did we write down the address of this element? What all we considered? Then we are going to generalize this particular formula. We've written this specific to this particular matrix. Let us then generalize it if you do not have any doubts. No, so this is not the correct declaration. You will have to mention the number of rows as well. If you're doing it statically, Vipul, then you will have to mention the number of rows also. Okay, so yes, if there are no doubts, okay, you want me to explain it again? Okay, let us go through this again. Once again, very quickly, and then generalize this formula. So we say that, let us say you have been given an integer matrix of this size. Yes, the base address will be given to you. So in this example, you can consider any base address. Let us say if you say 2000 is the base address, then you can calculate. But in the actual, whenever you will have to calculate it, you will be given the base address. Okay, so we say that this is the integer array, integer two-dimensional array that you have, which has 5 rows and 10 columns. And now you want to find out the address of A of 10. Okay, 10 actually means the second row and the first element, because we start off the row numbers and the column numbers by 0. So this is how we do it. Now here, if you consider, if you let us say consider what will be the matrix, you are going to have 5 rows, and in each row you are going to have 10 elements, because you have 10 columns. In each row you are going to have 10 elements. So I am going to, let us say, represent those 10 elements like this. Okay. So this is the address that we are currently calculating is row major. It is not column major. Okay. Now you come up here, you say that I am going to find out the address of this particular element, which is actually located here. We have located it physically here, and now we want to actually find out the correct address for it. So how do we write the address? We say that since we want to go to this particular row, we will first have to skip some number of elements. So first, when you locate the row number, for that you say I will have to skip some elements. So those elements are equivalent to 10 here. In each row you have 10 elements, so you skip these 10 elements first. So you do 10. You multiply this by 4 because each element here is going to take up 4 bytes. Since it is going to take up 4 bytes, you say that I'm going to multiply it by 4. And since we have to find out in bytes, the address in bytes we are considering here. So that is why we multiply 4. The next thing we do is multiply the row number here. To which row do you want to go to? Since I want to go to row number 1, I am going to multiply 1 here. Say suppose if you want to go to row number 2, you will have to skip these 10 elements, then these 10 elements again, which is 20 elements. So you multiply this 10 into 2. You do 10 into 2 and multiply that by the size of each element. Now the next thing that you have, you add to it the column that you want to go to. Since I wanted to go to column number 0, which is the first column, so I did 0 into again the size. Okay, so this is simple calculation of address of a two-dimensional array, an element in the two-dimensional array. Now if you want to generalize this formula, what do? You say that if I have an integer array, if a, let us say, consider this as m and consider this as n. So m is the total number of rows that you have in your matrix and n is the total number of columns that you have in your matrix. So you say I have m and n, and now I want to calculate the address of the element which is at ith row and jth column. Okay, let us consider it this way. This is the complete matrix you have. M is the total number of rows, n is the total number of columns. And then you have A of ij. I is something that you want to, some row number that you want to go to, and j is the column number there. Okay, so how do you find out address of A of ij when you know that this is an integer matrix that you have? You say the base address like you did here. Let us generalize this. Then you write, so 10 here, 10 actually is the total number of columns that you have. This is equivalent to the total number of columns that you have. So here the total number of columns is n. Then you multiply it by the, since we are considering this as an integer array, you multiply it by 4, and then you multiply it by the row number that you want to go to. So the row number here that you wanted to go to was 1, but in this case for the generalized formula it is I. So you have n into 4 into I, and then you have the column number that you want to go to. So the column number here that you want to go to is 0, so which is equivalent to j here in the generalized formula. So you do j into the size again. So you have the size as 4. So this is actually the generalized formula in order to find out the address of A of ij when you have been given that you have a matrix of integer type of m rows and n columns, and ma is the base address here. Okay, so now this generalized formula can be actually be changed to any other formula for let us say two-dimensional array of character type. So for a character type, what will change here? What is going to change here for a character type? So if you have character A, M, N, yes, this is row major. This address calculation is for row major. So what will happen if you have a character type two-dimensional array? Yes, 4, only the only part that is changed is this 4 is changed to 1. Why? Because the size of each character only takes up 1 byte. So you do A of ij is equal to ma plus n into 4 into 1 plus j into 1. Okay, for double type it is changed to 8. Correct. So looks like a lot of you have understood this address calculation part. If any one of you still have any doubts, then please post in the group right away, and we are going to repeat the same thing one more time if any one of you want. No, so shall we move ahead, everyone? Has everyone understood this part? Has everyone understood how are we doing it in the generalized formula? Okay, so what if we have to find out the address of A of 2, 3? So let us consider this example and then find out that as well. So we say that here if you have A, 2, 3. So how are you going to do it? You say address of A, 2, 3 is going to be, so again you start off with MA, which is the base address. Now you want to go to row number 2, right? You want to go to row number 2. So in row number 2, you have to go to column number 3, which is this column. So you want to find out this particular element. So how do you do it? You will have to skip these many elements. So for that, how do you write? You write down the number of columns that you have, which is 10 here, into the number of rows that you want to go to. Okay, so you want to go to row number 2, which means you have to skip these 2 rows. So you have to skip these 2 rows, you write 2, which is this equivalent to this number here, which is the row number that you have, this number that you've given, into the size. So the size here is 4. And now the next thing that you do is you want to go to this particular column. So for this particular column, you will have to skip these many elements. So you see 3 elements you are skipping for going to column number 3. So you do 3 into the number of elements into the size of each element. The size of each element is 4. Okay. So this is the formula that you're going to get for finding out the address of A of 2, 3. Okay, what if the size of the integer is different and not 4? How to find the size? So use the size of operator, as a lot of your friends have already mentioned. Yes, let us continue then. So we have talked about address calculation part, and we have, okay, so with that, now you can see here the function argument part that I was telling you earlier. It isn't related much, but let us just for your information, for you to know the reason is that if you see in row major, so this all of this address calculation was for row major. For calculating address in row major, the formula in the generalized formula, you can see you require the total number of columns. You do not really require the total number of rows. You do not really require the value of m. You require only the value of n, which is the total number of columns. So for the same purpose, whenever you are actually passing let us say a 2-dimensional array as an argument, you require, and it is mandatory for you to mention the number of columns, but not really the number of rows. So you can go ahead with the declaration where you do not have the number of rows and only the number of columns. Okay, so this was about address calculation. Let us quickly also look at the dynamic memory allocation of 2-dimensional arrays. Previously, we have talked about dynamic memory allocation of 1-dimensional arrays. Let us also do that for 2-dimensional. Okay, so there are actually a lot of ways in which you can dynamically allocate memory for 2-dimensional arrays. We are only going to be discussing 2 of those. And so one of those is the most common one which is used. So you can also use this particular method to dynamically allocate memory for a 2-dimensional array, because it is one of the simplest form and it is not really complex. You do not really need pointers in order to do this. Okay, so the first and the one of the most basic and one of the most widely used is let us say this. So you take an integer pointer since you want to have a integer matrix, and you say the same way that you did earlier, which is int star. You say malloc and you say size of int, since you want to have an integer matrix, number of rows and number of columns. So R here is number of rows that you want to have, and C here is number of columns that you want to have. Okay, so this is one way which you can use for dynamic memory allocation. Now, let us look at, since we have already understood a lot of times how it is done, let us also understand how it is, in which form it is stored. So say for now, let us consider a small matrix of, let us say, 2 cross 2 size, and then understand how can you access the elements. How will you be able to access the elements if you have declared a two-dimensional array using dynamic memory allocation? So for that, let us consider you have a two-dimensional array. So you have certain elements here, let us say, for example, and you do 2 cross 2. Okay, and let us say this is row number 0, row number 1, column number 0, and column number 1. Okay, now say you have this A here. In the memory, as I said, it is, sorry, in the memory, as I said, it is in the linear form. So let us say you have this, and since you have only 4 elements, so let us say A, since like I said that this pointer is going to be pointing to the starting address of the array that you're going to have. So A points to the starting address of the array that you have. Then the next element will be stored at A plus 1. The next element will be stored at A plus 2. The next at A plus 3, right? Is this, does everyone understand why I have written this and how this works? We have read about this previously, that whenever you add an integer to a pointer, it is going to actually point to the next position by multiplying the size of the data, right? So A plus 1 is at this particular position, which is points to the second element of the array, A plus 2 to the third element, and A plus 3 to the next element. Okay, so here, now once you have this, you say, let us say I have this A here. A, that means points to this particular position, and A plus 1, since we are already storing, we know that we are storing in C programming language, we do it in row major format. So the next element that you are going to have will be at this particular place. So A plus 1 will be at this place, A plus 2 will be here, and A plus 3 will be here, right? Now, how can you access these elements? So for that, if you want to find out the address of this element, how can you refer to this element? So you say that I am going to do A plus the column number, sorry, the row number, which is 0, into the total number of columns that you have, which is 2, and then the column number that you have, which is 0. So what is this going to give you? When you evaluate this expression, you get A, which is the address of the first element. So here you simply mention, what do you mention? You simply, since this is already an address, A is already an address, and you actually add the position. So what you're adding here is, so this is, what is this? Let us generalize this thing. So after you generalize this thing, you get A plus I, which is for this, which is for row number, into the number of columns that you have. Let us say the total number of columns that you have is COL plus J, which is the column number that you want to go to. And you mention a star here in order to get the actual value. Okay, so has everyone understood this part? How did we actually get to this particular place? Okay, so in order to calculate the address of column major, what do you do here? You simply, instead of multiplying the number of columns, total number of columns here, you remove this total number of columns from here, and you multiply the total number of rows. So in the column major format, you will require the total number of rows. That is simply how you do it. We don't really require it, but anyway. Okay, why are we not multiplying it by 4? So as I said, in the actual, so this is only for calculating whenever you are multiplying 4 here, this is for calculating the actual address. But when you do it here, what happens in actual pointer arithmetic is that when you add an integer here, so this is the same thing that we looked into in one of our previous lectures, which is when you add an integer to a pointer, it is automatically going to make that many places of jump. So what did I say? I said pointer plus an integer automatically results to pointer plus integer into the data size of data type. This is what actually happens. We were multiplying above by 4 in order to calculate the address. So that is going to give us an address in a number form. So this is just for our own convenience for calculating it. Actually, what happens when we do pointer arithmetic is that whenever you add an integer, this is what happens. Okay, so is everyone understanding this particular part? Akshita, I did not understand your question. We have used 1 minus d. What part are you referring to? I did not understand your question. Please post something more clearly. Anyway, for others, any doubts in understanding this? Let us quickly also look at another method for, okay, let us then, if you have understood, let us then quickly look at the other method in which you can dynamically allocate memory. Okay, so let me just quickly repeat this part again, and then we are going to look at the second method as well. So how do you do it? Let us say if I've taken this example here is because so that you can actually calculate it for a smaller size. So say consider now this time I want to find out the address or I want to refer to this element. We are not finding the address here. We are actually referring to a particular element. I'm saying how can you refer to a particular element? So for that, for this particular element, if you want to do, you say I am going to start off with the initial address, which is A. So A is actually the address. The column means total number of columns. Yes, correct. So you do A plus the value of I that you want to go to. So you want to, since you want to go to A of 1, 1. So the value of I here becomes 1. That is this. multiplied by the total number of columns that you have, which is 2, plus the value of j. So j is actually the column number that you want to go to, which is 1 again. So what does this result to? This result to a plus 3. Okay, this becomes 2 plus 1. So this results to a plus 3, which is the last element here, which is again the last element here. In the actual way wherein it is stored in the memory is this. So you refer to a plus 3 position, which is this position, that is the last element of the matrix that you have. Okay, let us look at the next way of doing it as well. So the next way of doing it is simply of having an array which is of type an integer pointer array, pointer type array, let us say. So let us say you simply define that I am going to have like this. I am going to have an array of pointers. Okay. And what will be the size here? The size will be the number of rows that you have. Okay. So the next thing that you do is you want to, for each pointer, so how can you represent this? So you say that for each, I have like this, let us say this is going to store an address, this is again going to store an address, this is again going to store an address. So if you have a 3 cross 3, let us say you want to have a 3 cross 3 matrix, then you are going to have 3 different pointers. So you have 3 pointers every time. And for each of these, what do? You say that for I is equal to 0 and less than the number of rows, you say I am going to at each particular pointer declare some memory dynamically. So you do int star malloc size of int multiplied by the number of columns. Okay, so you multiplied with this by the number of columns. Now what happens here is that, let us say you have it in this form. So for each this is, let us say, ARR of 0, this is ARR of 1, this is ARR of 2. So for each of these pointers, each pointer is pointing to a one-dimensional array. If you can see, because you have a one-dimensional array of size of columns, the number of columns. So let us say if you want to have 3 cross 3, the total number of rows and the total number of columns is 3, then this is how you will have it. Okay. Each of these pointers is storing the address to a one-dimensional array which is of this form. So this is how you can actually imagine it. And now if say you want to write down the and find out the address of a of, let us say a of ij, then you could say star ARR plus I plus j. Okay, is this clear to everyone? So this is one of the, for now let me tell you this part, the first method that we looked for dynamic memory allocation of a two-dimensional array is one of those that is very widely used. Okay, so you can actually refer to this one as well, but this one I am explaining you this one because a lot of output questions will require you to understand this format as well. How are you referring to an element here? Okay, so that is why we are discussing this particular part. A lot of output questions in exams require you to understand this format as well. A of ij can be referred to by this. Okay, so Harshit is asking that, okay, so you want to go ahead and do like that for each particular, you are saying that I'm going to do size of care. So that actually won't be working properly, because here you are saying that I am going to store a pointer of type integer. But here you are saying that I'm going to return a typecast it to character type. Okay, so if you if you want to mess up, you can do that. But for now, let us just understand how can you do it for a matrix. We are looking at this particular thing only because this is asked to students a lot of times when you refer to any output question. So a lot of output questions will require you to understand this. Okay, so is this part clear to everyone? Now, what happens here is that when you do ARR plus ARR plus an integer, it is going to move to the next row. So if let us say you do ARR plus 1 star plus 1 here, so where will this lead to you? This will lead to you here. So you do ARR, the inner ARR plus 1 will bring you here at this particular place, and plus 1 is going to bring you to this position. So this is going to actually give you ARR of 1, 1. Okay, which is ij here and ij here. So if you want to go to this element, you first add to the row number. So once you add, it is going to skip those many rows and then come to this number within the columns. Okay. So this is another type, not widely used, but because it is kind of complex for anyone to understand whenever you want to do this. But yes, it is one of those very simple ones. Okay, so can I give an example with an output question? So it is simply the output question that is asked is of this kind only. So they say that they give you a matrix. They give you a matrix. They say that let us say you have this matrix here 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they say now you have to find out. So they give you this expression in printf. They say printf this expression, and you have certain values of I and j, and then they say what will be the output of this expression. So you simply have to find out which element out of these is going to be printed. Okay. So because those who don't understand this part, what do they do here is that they simply do plus
ये
1
यार
to
एक छोटी सी
ARR
मैंने
here,
पीडीएफ
go
बनाई
to
है
the
जहाँ पे
next
इस
element,
ओलंपियाड का मैं आपको
and
प्रोसेस
again do plus 1
एक्सप्लेन
to
करता हूँ और
ARR and go
बेनिफिट्स
to the
इससे
next
जो दुनिया
element.
भर के हो
So
रहे हैं
they print this
नेशनल
element,
ओलंपियाड है यार ये
but
पहले
actually
इसमें
it
क्या
is
होता था
this
जेडसी
element,
होता था
because
आप
whenever
इसके
you
थ्रू
are
भी घुस
adding
सकते थे
1 to
फर्स्ट
this
राउंड में आप इसके थ्रू
ARR,
भी
it is going to
पर अब
skip to the next one-dimensional array. Okay, so that is why you have certain these kind of output questions. Nothing more complex if you have already understood this. Okay, so if there are no doubts in this particular part, then let us end the class for today. We have up till now discussed some questions from the test. We discussed the first test and its questions. We will see if we have time in further classes for the rest of the tests as well. But today, other than this, we discussed the matrix and its theoretical part, which is its dynamic memory allocation, its address calculation, also the what is row major and column major. We looked at sorry, we looked at how it is initialized and how it is declared. We looked at both static as well as dynamic um, declaration, along with how are you going to initialize it if you want to do it in the program itself, right? In the next class, we are going to look into questions. So this uh, class was basically a prelim for this. I'm going to be also posting a link of the test for today, and all of you are requested to attempt it. Again, I would like to repeat the same thing, which is that a lot of you are not attempting the test, and it has now been made mandatory. I'm going to also be sending out emails for those who did not attend it earlier. Okay, so the test cannot be reopened since it has already been attempted once. I'm going to be posting a new link today for test 3, and you should be attempting that. The expiring time for the link is going to be the same as it was previously. Java was added for the previous test as well. I'm going to I'm not going to add it for today's test. It won't be added. Okay. Yes, so in a while I'm going to be sending out emails to everyone. The link will be shared through emails only and it won't be posted here. Okay, so yes, thank you everyone. See you in the next class.